The perfume of redwood and damp earth filled my lungs as I ventured further into the forest, my boots sinking into the mossy ground. A recent rain had left the world glistening, imbued with a freshness that felt like a new beginning. These woods had always been my sanctuary, the place I came when the hushed condemnations of Redwood Creek grew too loud. Today, the whispers had become open stares. "She's a strange one," they'd murmur as I passed the general store with my son Finn. "Living all alone out here, on the edge of the woods. It isn't natural." I wasn't a witch, just a young mother who found more peace in the company of ancient trees than in the judgment of a town that had long ago decided my quietness was a thing to be wary of. My son, with his wild black hair and my own pale eyes, only seemed to add to their suspicion. In a small town carved out of the primeval forest, being different was cause for alarm. My grandmother's pendant, a smooth river stone wrapped in silver, bounced against my chest. Its coolness was a familiar comfort through the fabric of my shirt. Just before she passed, she had pressed it into my hand, her fingers frail but her grip surprisingly firm. "The forest looks after its own, Alara," she had whispered, her gaze lucid despite her weakening body. "It's in your blood. Never forget that." I touched the stone now, drawing strength from its weight. She was the only one who had ever understood my bond with this place, who saw it as a gift rather than a failing. The pendant was my most treasured link to her, a talisman against the pervasive loneliness. The trail we followed was one of our own making, a route worn into the undergrowth over years of shared wanderings. It led to a sun-dappled clearing by a rushing creek where huckleberries grew in thickets. We were almost there when a sound cut through the forest's calm, a high, thin whine, followed by a desperate yelp that made me stop dead. Finn, who had been scrambling over a fallen log ahead, froze too. "What was that, Mama?" he whispered, his eyes wide. The sound came again, fainter this time. An animal was in pain. "Stay close to me," I said, moving cautiously toward the sound and parting a curtain of ferns. There, huddled at the base of a colossal redwood, were two wolf pups. Their fur, still downy and soft, had a remarkable silver sheen that seemed to shimmer in the dappled light. They were larger than any pups I'd ever read about, possessing a wildness that felt ancient. One of them had its leg bent at a sickening angle, while the other nudged it, whimpering in solidarity. My heart clenched. I scanned the surrounding woods, a knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. Where was their mother? A she-wolf would never willingly abandon her young. The thought sent a chill through me, but I couldn't just walk away and leave them to their fate. Kneeling slowly, I opened my foraging pack, pulling out the small first aid kit I always carried for Finn's inevitable scrapes. The uninjured pup let out a growl, a surprisingly fierce sound from such a small creature, and tried to shield its sibling. "It's okay," I murmured, my voice low and soothing. "We're here to help." To my astonishment, the pup quieted, its intelligent amber eyes fixed on mine. There was a depth of awareness in its gaze that was startling, an understanding that seemed to transcend that of a typical animal. For a fleeting moment, I felt a strange sense of connection, a thread of silent communication stretching between us. I shook it off, focusing on the injured pup. With gentle fingers, I examined the tiny leg. It was a clean break, one that could heal if it was set properly. I'd learned much from my grandmother, who knew the forest's remedies better than any doctor. As I worked, fashioning splints from twigs and binding the leg with cloth soaked in a yarrow poultice, I spoke softly to them. I told them about Finn, about my grandmother, about the secret language of the trees. The injured pup whimpered only once, while its sibling watched my every move with those unnervingly perceptive eyes. Finn sat beside me, stroking the healthy pup's head with a reverence that touched my heart. "There," I said finally, sitting back on my heels. That should hold. But you'll need to be kept safe and warm to heal. I bit my lip, knowing the immense risk I was about to take. Bringing wolf pups, pups of this size and strangeness, into my home would be all the proof the town needed that I was unhinged. But looking at their helpless forms, and then at my son's pleading face, I knew I had no other choice. As if it understood my dilemma, the healthy pup nudged its sibling toward my pack, then looked up at me with an expression of clear expectation. "All right," I whispered, carefully lifting both pups and settling them into the pack on a bed of soft moss. "You can stay with us until your family comes for you." The sun was bleeding through the canopy as we headed home, casting long, dancing shadows across our path. My small house stood apart from the town, a stone and timber structure that had been my grandmother's. A wisp of smoke still curled from the chimney from the morning's fire. Inside, I made a nest of old blankets for the pups by the hearth. I fed them a mixture of goat's milk and water from a dropper, trying not to think about what I would do when they grew bigger. Finn was enchanted, lying on his stomach and watching them as they finally drifted off to sleep, curled into a single ball of silver fur. I was stoking the fire when I felt it. A sudden, intense pressure in the air, a density that made the room feel smaller. The hairs on my arms stood on end. An instinct, primal and sharp, screamed that we were being watched. Moving to the window, I peered into the deepening twilight. At first, I saw only the familiar silhouettes of the redwoods against the bruised purple sky. Then a shadow detached itself from the others. It was a wolf, but impossibly large, bigger than any black bear. Its eyes caught the last rays of light and reflected them with an unsettling sapphire blue glow. My breath hitched. Stories the old-timers told around campfires flooded my mind. Tales of the forest's guardians, wolves that were more than animals, that moved like ghosts and protected the heart of the woods. My grandmother had believed those stories. "The forest has a king," she used to say, her eyes distant, "and he rules a hidden kingdom." The massive wolf stood motionless, its gaze locked on my house. I felt pinned by its stare, unable to look away. There was an ancient power in that gaze, a wild intelligence that made my heart hammer against my ribs. Then, as silently as it had appeared, it dissolved back into the shadows. I stayed at the window long after it was gone, my hand clutching the pendant at my throat. I knew with a certainty that reached into my bones that by bringing those pups into my home, I had crossed a threshold into a world far older and more dangerous than my own. Behind me, one of the pups whimpered in its sleep. I turned to check on them, kneeling by their makeshift bed. The injured one, a little male, opened his eyes and looked at me. In that instant, I felt that same bizarre connection from the forest, a sense of recognition, of a lock turning in a door I never knew existed. "What have I done, Finn?" I whispered to my son, who had come to stand beside me. But even as fear coiled in my gut, another feeling grew alongside it, a profound sense of rightness, as if I had just stepped onto a path I was always meant to walk. My sleep that night was a restless tapestry of dreams, woven with images of running wolves and a pair of human eyes that burned with the same electric blue I had seen in the forest. I woke at dawn to find the pups awake, their amber eyes bright and alert. The little male was already testing his splinted leg with surprising confidence. "You're a fast healer," I murmured, offering them more milk. The female pup, Sorsha, licked my fingers when I was done, her tiny tongue warm and rough. I couldn't suppress a smile. That smile vanished when I opened my front door. Lying on the step was a freshly killed deer, its neck broken cleanly. It was a clear offering, not a threat. A provision. I looked up, scanning the impenetrable line of trees, but the woods kept their secrets. Still, the feeling of being watched was a constant prickle against my skin. Waste not, want not, my grandmother would have said. I spent the morning butchering the deer, my mind racing, trying to ignore the growing conviction that my world had been irrevocably altered. The pups, Kaelin and Sorsha, watched from their nest, their gazes following my every move. It was late morning when the sound came. Not a knock on the door, but 3 sharp taps on the window pane that made me drop my knife with a toong clatter. Framed in the glass was a man's face, a face I'd never seen but felt I recognized on a cellular level. His features were stark and compelling, as if carved from granite. High cheekbones, a strong jawline shadowed with stubble, and eyes that held the same otherworldly blue fire as the wolf from the night before. His hair was as black as a raven's wing, falling untamed around his face. Even through the small window I could see he was tall, with broad shoulders beneath a dark, rugged cloak. Our eyes met, and for a moment, the floor seemed to drop away from me. It was an impossible, jarring recognition. I knew him. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that he was here for the pups. We remained frozen for a long moment, me in the middle of my kitchen, him at the window, his gaze unwavering. By the fire, the pups stirred, letting out small, excited yips. I should have been terrified. A stranger had materialized at my home, a man whose very presence crackled with a barely restrained power. But what I felt instead was a strange brew of awe and destiny. Slowly, I wiped my hands on my apron and walked to the door. Arguing or pretending he wasn't there felt utterly pointless. This had been set in motion the moment I'd found his children. My hand shook as I lifted the latch, but I kept my chin up as I pulled the door open. Up close, he was even more formidable, towering over me, his frame blocking the morning sun. The cloak I'd seen was made of some dark, unfamiliar fur, its sheen matching the pups' coats. "You have my children," he said. His voice was a low rumble, deep and resonant, with a strange ancient cadence. I swallowed, forcing myself not to retreat. Finn, hearing the voice, peeked out from behind my legs. "They were hurt," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "The little one's leg was broken. I couldn't just leave them." His gaze shifted from me to Finn, and his expression softened almost imperceptibly before returning to its intense focus on me. "Most of your kind would have run. Or worse." "I'm not most people," I heard myself say, the words escaping before I could censor them. My grandmother's pendant seemed to warm against my skin in silent agreement. A flicker of something, surprise, perhaps, crossed his face. He tilted his head, a gesture unnervingly similar to the way the pups had watched me. "No," he agreed after a moment. "You are not." He took a step forward, and I moved back instinctively, allowing him into my small home. He filled the space, his presence so immense it felt like the air itself had become charged. The pups wriggled with delight in their blanket nest. The man, because no other word fit, moved to them with a liquid grace, kneeling beside them. His harsh features gentled as he looked at his children. "You set the bone," he observed, his long fingers gently probing the splint on Kaelin's leg. "You have skill." "My grandmother taught me a few things," I said, hovering by the table, keeping Finn behind me. He looked up, those piercing blue eyes seeming to search for something in my face. "What is your name?" I hesitated. Names held power. My grandmother had taught me that. But refusing to answer seemed like a grave mistake. "Ilara," I said. "And this is my son, Finn." "Ilara?" he repeated, and the sound of my name on his tongue sent a strange shiver down my spine. "I am Lorcan." He offered no other title, but he said his name with the quiet authority of one who needed none. The pups, Kaelin and Sorsha, nuzzled his hands, their delight at his presence obvious. "They're yours, then," I stated, the reality of the situation solidifying. A shadow crossed his face. Their mother, my sister Rihanna, was killed by poachers 2 days ago. I was tracking them when these two strayed from the den. Grief and a cold, controlled rage were coiled beneath the surface of his words. I thought of the colossal wolf from the night before, the power I had sensed, and the pieces began to click into place. "You're not," I started, then trailed off, unsure how to ask the impossible question. A corner of his mouth quirked up, a gesture that wasn't quite a smile. "Not what, Alara? Not human?" He rose to his full height, and even in the bright morning light, an aura of night and wilderness clung to him. "What do the stories in your town say about the deep woods?" My mouth was dry. "They say it's guarded by creatures that are wolf and man both. They talk about an alpha king who rules them." The tales were usually dismissed as drunken folklore, meant to keep children from wandering too far. Lorcan studied me, his expression unreadable. "And you? Do you believe these stories?" "I believe the forest has secrets," I said carefully. "My grandmother taught me to respect them." His gaze dropped to the pendant at my throat, and a flash of recognition lit his eyes. "That stone is from the Heart Pool, in the center of our territory. Very few humans have ever laid eyes on it, let alone been allowed to take from it." My hand flew to the pendant. It was hers. She said the forest would protect me. Did she now? A new speculative tone entered his voice. "What else did your grandmother tell you, Alara?" A torrent of memories flooded my mind. My grandmother teaching me which herbs healed and which could harm, how to read the clouds, how to move through the woods without a sound. But her last words echoed the loudest. "She said I belonged to the forest," I whispered, "and that one day I would understand what that meant." Lorcan's eyes never left mine. In their blue depths, I saw something shift, a decision solidifying. Perhaps that day has arrived. Before I could question him, he bent and gathered both pups into his arms. "You have my gratitude, Alara, for saving them. Few of your kind possess such courage." "Wait," I said, an unexpected reluctance to see them go rising in me. "The leg, it needs more time to heal." "It will heal," he said with absolute confidence. "Our kind recovers quickly." Our kind. The confirmation of my suspicion sent a thrill of fear and wonder through me. This man, Lorcan, was one of them, a shapeshifter, the alpha king from the stories, and the pups were his children. I should have been recoiling in terror. Instead, I found myself stepping closer, reaching out to stroke Kaylin's soft head one last time. Will they be all right? Without their mother? A flicker of vulnerability crossed Lorcan's face, so brief I almost missed it. "The pack raises its young as one," he said. "They will be cared for. But they will remember you, Alara, as will I." The way he spoke my name felt like both a promise and a warning. He turned to the door, the pups cradled securely. I thought that was it. A bizarre, unforgettable encounter I could never speak of. Then he paused on the threshold and looked back at me, his gaze locking with mine. "The forest remembers those who are kind to it," he said, echoing my grandmother's words so perfectly my breath caught. "I will return tomorrow, at dawn. Be ready." "Ready for what?" I managed to ask, my voice a faint whisper. His eyes glinted, catching the light in a way no human eyes ever could. "To make a choice, Alara." And then he was gone, moving with such impossible speed it seemed he had simply vanished into the trees. I stood in the open doorway, staring at the empty space where he had been, wondering if I had imagined it all. But the nest of blankets by the hearth was empty, and the scent of pine and something wilder, something untamable, lingered in my small house. "Be ready," he had said, "to make a choice." What choice could the king of the wolf shifters possibly want from me, a reclusive single mother on the edge of town? My grandmother's pendant was warm against my skin, pulsing with a faint energy. Whatever this was, whatever lay ahead, I had the unnerving feeling my grandmother had known it was coming, and in her own quiet way, she had been preparing me for it my entire life. I spent the remainder of the day in a state of hyper-awareness. Every sense felt amplified. The greens of the forest outside my window seemed more vibrant, the rustle of leaves and calls of birds more distinct. My own heartbeat was a loud, steady drum, marking the hours until dawn. As night fell, sleep was impossible. I sat by the window watching the moon climb over the giant redwoods, casting a silver web across the clearing. In the ethereal light, I saw them, shadows moving at the edge of the woods, larger than normal wolves, their forms fluid and watchful. They were waiting, just as I was. When I finally drifted into a fitful sleep, my dreams were intense. I was running through the forest, not on two legs, but on four. The ground flying beneath me, the sense of the night air a rich tapestry in my nostrils. I felt a sense of freedom so profound it was breathtaking. I woke with a gasp just as the sky began to lighten. The memory of wild joy still coursed through me. A low, haunting howl echoed from the deep woods, a sound that didn't frighten me but seemed to call to a part of my soul I never knew existed. It was answered by a chorus of others, and the hair on my arms stood on end. Not with fear, but with a strange, inexplicable longing. Moving as if in a trance, I checked on Finn, who was still sleeping soundly, then dressed in simple jeans and a worn sweater. I braided my hair back and left the pendant where it always was, against my skin. I had just finished lacing my boots when the sound came again. 3 firm taps on the door. My heart leaped, but I moved to answer it, a sense of inevitability settling over me. Lorcan stood on my doorstep, backlit by the rising sun. He was dressed more simply today in dark, functional clothing that looked both modern and timeless. He seemed at once more human and more intensely wild. "You're ready," he stated, not a question. His eyes swept over me, then glanced inside toward Finn's room. "You haven't told me what for," I replied, my voice holding steady. For the first time, a true smile touched his lips, transforming his severe features. "For a journey," he said, "and for the truth of who you are." The words settled between us, heavy with unspoken meaning. I started to protest, to say I couldn't just leave Finn, but he held up a hand. "He comes with us. He is part of this now too." The idea of taking my son into the deep woods with this near stranger should have sent me running. But beneath all the rational fear was a powerful current pulling me forward, a certainty that this was a moment my entire life had been leading to. My grandmother's voice whispered in my memory, "Trust your instincts." I took a deep breath. "All right," I said, waking Finn and dressing him quickly, explaining only that we were going on an adventure. "Lead the way." Lorcan nodded once, then turned and strode toward the tree line. Finn, holding my hand tightly, looked up at the towering man with wide, curious eyes. As we entered the forest, the path vanished. Lorcan moved with a silent, fluid grace that was mesmerizing, never snapping a twig or disturbing the dew on the ferns. We walked for what felt like hours, deeper into the woods than I had ever dared to go. The trees here were titans, their canopies so dense they created a perpetual twilight on the forest floor. The air was different, thick with the scent of ancient growing things and a humming energy that made my skin tingle. Just as my legs began to ache, Lorcan stopped so suddenly I almost ran into him. "Listen," he whispered. I held my breath. At first I heard only the familiar symphony of the forest. Then I sensed it, a subtle shift, a collective watchfulness. "We're not alone," I murmured. Lorcan glanced back, a hint of approval in his eyes. "No." As if on cue, shapes began to emerge from the shadows between the trees. Wolves, larger than any I had ever seen. their coats ranging from jet black to snow white. They formed a silent, loose circle around us, their intelligent eyes fixed on me and Finn. My heart pounded, but it wasn't fear. It was a strange sense of homecoming, of meeting long-lost relatives. Finn gasped, but it was a sound of wonder, not terror. "Your pack," I said softly. "My family," Lorcan corrected. A large russet-furred wolf with graying fur stepped forward, its amber eyes narrowed. It let out a low growl, clearly directed at us. "Ronan disapproves," Lorcan said, a note of amusement in his voice. "He has little trust for outsiders." The casual way he spoke to and about the wolf sent a fresh shiver down my spine. Instead of replying, Lorcan continued walking. The wolves parted to let us pass, then fell in around us, a silent, intimidating escort. The russet wolf, Ronan, trotted beside Lorcan, casting suspicious glances back at me. "Where are the pups?" I asked, needing to break the tense silence. "Safe," Lorcan replied. "With Nyla, one of our den mothers. They are well cared for." The tenderness in his voice when he spoke of them was unmistakable. "Their mother," I said carefully. "Rihanna. She was your sister." "She was," he said, his voice flat with contained grief. "The men who killed her were hunting on our lands. They will be found. Justice will be served." The cold finality in his tone left no room for doubt. I found I couldn't blame him. "I'm sorry for your loss," I said simply. He nodded once. "It is the risk we run. Living on the border between our world and yours, humans destroy what they fear." "Not all of them," I said, thinking of my grandmother. "No," he agreed, finally looking back at me. "Not all." The ground began to slope downward into a hidden valley. The trees thinned, and I gasped. Below us lay a secret world, a wide green clearing split by a sparkling stream. Dwellings built of stone and living wood were scattered throughout, blending so seamlessly with the landscape they seemed to have grown there. People, some in human form, some as wolves, moved among the buildings. "The heart of our territory," Lorcan said, watching my face. "Our home." "It's beautiful," I breathed. There was a harmony here, a balance between civilization and nature that I had never seen. As we descended, all activity paused. Every eye turned to us. Some gazes were curious, others wary, and a few, from the older members of the pack, were openly hostile. "They're not used to visitors," I observed. "We have not had a human in our valley in 50 years, Lorcan replied, "and never one brought by the Alpha." The weight of that statement settled on me. Whatever this choice was, it was unprecedented. He led us to the largest structure, a circular hall with a roof of living moss. 2 wolves stood guard at the entrance. They lowered their heads as Lorcan approached. "Wait here," he instructed me. "Finn can stay with you. The elders wish to speak with me alone first." "Elders?" I asked, my anxiety spiking. "Lorcan, what is this about? Why are we here?" He paused and reached out, his fingers brushing my pendant. The brief touch sent a jolt of warmth through me. "This stone marks you, Alara, as one who belongs to both worlds. The elders require proof of what I already know." Before I could ask more, he disappeared inside, leaving me and Finn under the intense scrutiny of the guards and the rest of the pack. The russet wolf, Ronan, sat a few paces away, his amber eyes never leaving my face. "I only wanted to help the pups," I said to him, feeling foolish for speaking to a wolf, but certain he understood. I meant no harm. Ronan's ears twitched, but his skeptical expression didn't change. From inside the hall, I could hear the low murmur of voices, sometimes rising in debate. My name was spoken several times. The waiting stretched on. Just as I began to feel truly unwelcome, the voices inside ceased. A moment later, Lorcan emerged, followed by 3 elderly people. Their faces were lined with age, but they moved with a surprising vitality, and their eyes held the same blue glow as Lorcan's. "Ilara," Lorcan said formally, "these are the elders of the Redwood Creek Pack. They have agreed to witness." "Witness what?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. The oldest of the women stepped forward, her sharp gaze raking over me. "You wear the Heartstone," she said, nodding at my pendant, "given to you by one of our blood." "My grandmother," I said, bewildered. "It was hers." "As well it should be," the woman replied. "I gave it to her myself, the day she chose to leave us for the human world." The ground seemed to drop from under my feet. "What are you saying?" "Your grandmother was born Isolde of this pack," the woman said simply. "My youngest sister. She fell in love with a human man. It is a rare thing, but it happens." My mind spun. My grandmother. A shifter? It seemed impossible. And yet, her unusual strength, her affinity with animals, the way she had taught me the secrets of the forest, it all clicked into a terrifying, wondrous new picture. "That means I couldn't finish the sentence. "Quarter blood," one of the male elders supplied. "Usually not enough to manifest the change, but when the alpha line is involved." He glanced at Lorcan meaningfully. "The pups," I said, understanding dawning. "They knew. That's why I felt that connection." I looked at Lorcan. "That's why? You came for me. You sensed it." "I sensed the potential dormant in your blood," he corrected. "Potential for what?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "To become one of us." The second elder, a woman with a gentle face, said softly. "To claim your birthright. To join the pack. To become a wolf." It was madness. Yet a deep part of me, the part that had always felt like an outsider in the human world, resonated with the truth of it. "How?" I whispered. Lorcan stepped forward, closing the space between us. "Through the heart pool, the source of our magic, and through a choice. My choice. As Alpha." His intense gaze held mine. "And yours, as the one chosen." "What choice?" I demanded. The old woman, my great-aunt, chuckled. "She has Isolde's impatience." "Good." Lorcan's eyes never left mine. "The heart pool can awaken the wolf within you, but for one with so little of our blood, the transformation is perilous. You could be lost, your mind shattered. You would need an anchor to this world. And that anchor would be you," I guessed, the pieces falling into place. He nodded. "As Alpha, I can forge a bond with you, a mate bond. It would tether your spirit to mine, guiding you through the change. But such a bond is for life." The implication was staggering. He wasn't just offering help, he was offering himself. A permanent, binding connection. "It would make you my mate," the male elder clarified. "It would bind your life to his. Your son would be protected as the Alpha's own." "And if I say no?" I asked, my voice small. "Then you and your son return to your home," Lorcan said. "You will be considered kin, and we will watch over you from a distance. The pups will be allowed to visit," he added, his voice softening. "They have grown fond of you." As if on cue, Kaelin and Sorsha came bounding out from between 2 dwellings, their legs strong and sure. They rushed to me, tumbling over each other in their excitement, licking my hands and Finn's face. Finn giggled, hugging them tightly. My heart ached at their pure, uncomplicated affection. I rose, the pups circling my legs. "How long do I have?" "Until the moon rises," the gentle elder Maeve said. "The transformation must be done tonight, when the pool's power is at its peak. Only hours to decide the fate of my life and my son's." It was an impossible choice. But what was the alternative? A life of loneliness and suspicion, always looking over my shoulder? "I want to see this heart pool," I said, straightening my shoulders. Before I decide. Lorcan nodded. Come. He extended his hand. I hesitated for a second before placing my palm in his. His skin was warm and calloused, and the contact sent a jolt through me. His fingers closed around mine, strong and sure, and a strange sense of peace settled over me. He led me away, Finn and the pups, trotting at our heels. Pack members watched us pass, their murmurs following us. I heard my name, Lorcan's title, and the word chosen repeated in tones of disbelief. They're talking about us, I said quietly. They are not used to seeing their alpha hold a woman's hand, Lorcan replied, a hint of dry humor in his voice. Much less a human one. Half human, I corrected, testing the words. His hand tightened on mine. We followed the stream to where the valley narrowed. The sound of a waterfall grew louder, and then the trees opened to reveal a breathtaking sight. Water cascaded down a cliff into a perfectly round pool. The water itself was a luminous, glowing turquoise, so clear I could see every stone on the bottom. The heart pool, Lorcan said softly. The air here crackled with energy. My pendant grew warm against my chest. It's beautiful, I whispered. And dangerous, he cautioned. For you, the challenge will be immense. Your human side will fight the change. Without me, you would be torn apart. And with you? I asked, turning to face him. We were still holding hands. His blue eyes, which matched the pool's glow, held mine. With me, you will have a path back, a lifeline, but it will bind us. Forever. It wasn't a question. Yes. No evasion. Our lives, our fates, would be intertwined. And what about feelings? I faltered, unsure how to ask. A corner of his mouth lifted in that almost smile. Are you asking if a mate bond requires love, Alara? I nodded, blushing. Traditionally, yes. For us, it would begin as a necessity for your survival. But, he paused, his gaze intensifying. I would not make this offer if I did not feel a pull toward you, if I did not see a strength in you worth binding my own life to. His raw honesty struck me more deeply than any poetic declaration. He saw something in me, this powerful, formidable alpha. What do you see? I whispered. His free hand came up to cup my face, his thumb stroking my cheek. Courage, compassion, a wildness in your spirit that calls to my own. The combination of his touch, his gaze, and his words made my heart pound. This connection felt as if it had been forged over centuries, not days. I need to think, I said, stepping back. He released me at once. Of course. Maeve will show you to a place to rest. I will return at sunset for your answer. As he turned, Kaelin whined and pressed against my leg. Stay with her, Lorcan told the pup gently. Keep her company. The pup yipped happily and sat at my feet. Sorsha, after a moment's hesitation, followed her father. Maeve, the gentle elder, led me and Finn to a small, comfortable dwelling. My name is Maeve, she said. Isolde, your grandmother, was my cousin. We were close before she left. There was a wistful sadness in her voice. She never told me, I said, the omission a fresh pang of hurt. She was protecting you, Maeve said kindly. Knowledge of our kind is a dangerous burden in the human world. She smiled. But Isolde always planned for every possibility. The pendant was her way of ensuring your heritage could find you, if it was meant to. After she left, I sat with Finn on a bed of soft furs, Kaelin curled between us. The events of the last 2 days felt like a fever dream. To remain human, an outcast, always looking over my shoulder, or to embrace this wild, dangerous heritage, binding myself to a man I barely knew, but felt connected to in a way I couldn't explain. Finn, unaware of the gravity of the choice, was happily playing with Kaylin, his laughter echoing in the small room. He looked happier and more at ease here than I had ever seen him in town. He belonged here. And perhaps, so did I. I drifted into a sleep filled with dreams of running on four paws, but this time I was not alone. A huge, dark wolf ran at my side, his presence a steady, comforting warmth. I woke to Kaylin licking my face. The light outside had softened to the orange and purple of sunset. It was time. Rising, I found Finn asleep, curled up with the pup. I smoothed my hair and took a deep breath. Whatever I chose, I would do it for both of us. I found Lorcan waiting by the heart pool, silhouetted against the dying sun. He turned as I approached. "You have decided," he said. I nodded, coming to stand beside him. The pool seemed to pulse with light. "Before I answer," I said, "I need to know. If I choose this, what does it mean for us? For Finn?" His expression softened. "It means you will never be alone again, Alara. It means you will have a partner, a family. It means Finn will grow up safe, protected, and loved by the entire pack. And it means—" He paused, his voice dropping. "That in time, we might add more pups of our own to our family." The simple, honest future he painted was everything I had ever secretly longed for. I looked at the glowing water, then back at the man who was offering me a world. My grandmother's pendant was a warm, steady weight on my chest. "I choose to become who I was meant to be," I said, my voice clear and strong. "I choose the pack, and I choose you, Lorcan." A fierce, brilliant joy lit his eyes. He stepped closer, cradling my face in his hands. "Are you certain? This cannot be undone." In answer, I rose on my toes and pressed my lips to his. The kiss was electric, a blaze of heat and longing and the profound promise of home. His arms wrapped around me, holding me tight, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely and utterly found. When we broke apart, breathless, the moon was rising, its light bathing the pool in silver. "It is time," Lorcan said softly. Hand in hand, we walked to the water's edge. The elders and other pack members had gathered to witness. "The bond comes first," Lorcan explained. He drew a small, bone-handled knife and made a shallow cut across his palm. He offered the knife to me. My hand trembled, but I mirrored the action, wincing as the blade bit into my skin. He took my bleeding hand, pressing our palms together. He spoke words in an ancient guttural language that vibrated through me. I felt it then, a golden thread of light, of life, weaving itself between us, binding my soul to his. I gasped at the sudden, overwhelming awareness of him, not just beside me, but inside me. "Now," he said, his voice husky, "the water." He led me into the pool. The water was warm, embracing. In the center, with moonlight raining down, he cupped the glowing water and raised it to my lips. "Drink," he commanded gently. "Then let it take you. Follow the bond back to me. I will be waiting." The water tasted of moonlight and earth and ancient magic. It lit a fire in my veins. The world dissolved. My hand in his was my only anchor as he guided me under the surface. Darkness consumed me, and then an agony beyond description. My bones shifted, my skin stretched, my senses exploded. I was lost in a void between forms, terrified I would be trapped there forever. But then I felt it. The golden thread of our bond, pulsing with Lorcan's strength, his love, his unwavering presence. "Come back to me, Alara." His voice was a beacon. I clung to it, rebuilding myself around it, letting the pattern written in my blood take hold. The pain ceased as suddenly as it began. I surged upward, breaking the surface with a gasp that turned into a howl as I lifted my new muzzle to the moon. Lorcan was there on the bank, already in his massive black wolf form. His blue eyes, unchanged, watched me with pride and wonder as I swam to him. I emerged from the water, my own coat a pale, shimmering silver. The world was a symphony of scent and sound I had never imagined. His presence filled my mind, a warm, steady light. His joy, his relief, his profound love washed over me through our bond. The pack erupted in a chorus of welcoming howls. Maeve brought Finn to the edge of the pool. He looked at my wolf form, his eyes wide, and then he broke into a huge grin. "Mama," he breathed in awe. "You're so beautiful." Lorcan moved to my side, nudging my neck with his muzzle. "Are you well, my heart?" His thought was as clear as spoken words. I pressed against his solid, warm form, sending my own feelings back to him. Wonder, gratitude, and a love that already felt as ancient as the redwoods. Together, we turned toward the forest, our pack and our son behind us. My old life was over. The pain of the change was already fading, replaced by the thrill of what was to come. Lorcan waited for me at the tree line, his eyes full of promises. I turned from the pool and followed him into the moon-drenched woods. Our home, our future. We ran side by side, our paws falling in perfect rhythm on the soft earth, my grandmother's blessing a warm wind at our backs. At last I understood. I was finally, truly home.